Hello, I'm so excited to introduce today's episode. But before I do, I want to tell you about a new and very exciting opportunity to support Project Stand. If you believe in our mission to empower parents, youth, and communities to use technology in healthy ways, then will you take a stand by joining our Stand community? We invite you to give as little as $3 a month to help support our efforts to support you. You can sign up at projectstand.org/stand. Thank you so much for your support. Hello and welcome to Raising Today's Kids, a Project Stand podcast. I'm Brittany Homer and I am so excited to introduce my guest today. Project Stand empowers parents, youth, and communities to use technology in healthy ways. And my guests, Caleb and Bekah, are here to talk about the way that they do that in their work at Cascade Academy. And they have a lot of great insights into how to help parents deal with some of the struggles of parenting today. And Caleb is actually my new neighbor. I met him a few months ago. I was super impressed with what he does. And I said, tell me more. I just want to learn more. And I invited myself down to take a tour of their facility and was just super impressed. Yeah, so I'm just going to give you guys each a minute to introduce yourselves. So Caleb, do you want to go first and tell us about yourself, maybe your family, your hobbies, why you do what you do, what makes you passionate about the work that you do?
Sure. No, thank you. It's an honor to be here, Brittany. We're so excited to chat with you. My name's Caleb Cottle. I'm one of the founders of Cascade Programs and Director of Business Development and Outreach. And so it's my job to share the message of who we are and what we do and how we help adolescents struggling with anxiety and OCD learn how to really lean into the things that they've been avoiding and find safety and connection in their relationships and really kind of overcome some of the frustrating things that seems to be kind of really common amongst teenagers today. It seems like when I was growing up, when a lot of us were growing up, hardly anyone talked about anxiety. We knew what it was. But today, every student, every child I talk to says, oh, I have anxiety, or even I have an anxiety disorder. And where did that come from and what did that look like? So we're excited to talk about what that looks like today. I personally have 5 children of my own. Right now, we're in really kind of a fun time of life. I've got a child in elementary school, one in middle school, 2 in high school, and 1 in college. So personally, I'm helping my kids along kind of every step of the way. And technology is an important part of our relationship, an important part of the way we connect, and certainly something that requires a lot of attention. So eager to talk about that today. I've been working for the last about 20 years in adolescent mental health. I started in a wilderness environment. I became a recreational therapist because I love the outdoors. I loved really connecting and having experiences with adolescents. And that became my passion over time. I went on to get my MBA and moved into more administrative roles and have helped found several programs. Here at Cascade Programs, we've got 3 offerings for our students. We have Cascade Academy, which is a long-term residential treatment center for adolescent girls ages 12 to 18. We have a smaller short-term facility for adolescent girls ages 12 to 18. It's more of an assessment and stabilization facility, specifically working on OCD. And we also just acquired Cascade Lodge in Huntsville, Utah, working with adolescent boys ages 12 to 18. And so if there's a conversation about anxiety and OCD in adolescence, we love to be right in the middle of that conversation. We love to learn. We love to share our experiences and our expertise. And we're just thrilled that you'd have us here on your program, Brittany. Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like you guys, there's definitely a need for what you're doing, and that's where you're seeing the growth but also the success. So that's fantastic. All right, Bekah, tell us about yourself.
Thanks for having us. So I'm Bekah Schuler. I am the CEO for Cascade Programs. I'm also a clinical mental health counselor. So I'm a mental health therapist. And it's just been a pleasure to work with our families. And like Caleb said, we love to be part of these conversations. So thanks again for having us. I am a mom of 2. I have an almost 14-year-old daughter. So just in the thick of it with a lot of your listeners. And then I have an almost 7-year-old boy. but technology stuff goes all the way down to that when you're Roblox and Minecraft and oh boy, right? There's a lot to sort through. So we love the work that we do. We love the families and the students that we work with. And you asked a little bit about the why. And the why is just knowing for teenagers, especially, we have this really awesome developmental time to change the trajectory of their entire life for the better. And there's nothing like working with teenagers and their family, and seeing the long-term impacts that come from it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So I have this, I don't know any statistics. I don't know the research, I don't have numbers, but it just feels like anxiety rates are rising. Can you speak to that a little bit, and what you know about maybe the why behind that? Like, what is contributing to that? And yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, that's a $1 million question, right? $100 million, $1 billion question, right? And there's never just one true factor. There's a lot of different elements at play into cohorts and generational effects and different types of parenting. And then you introduce technology, and maybe I'll start there because we do know that has a profound impact on anxiety disorders and depression disorders, which come along together, right? They almost always trend one and the same. And with technology, we can see really clearly, I'm sure you and your listeners are familiar with things like The Social Dilemma, some other documentaries that have really highlighted the graphs and the trends of social media and the rise of social media in particular, and depression, anxiety. I think there's a really unique factor going on, and we get more gender specific information as research continues to come out. It's right now sort of trending like that social media seems to be impacting girls more than adolescent boys at this time. It still has a profound impact on boys, but we see it just magnified with our girls. A lot of that, I think, has to do with this comparison effect, right? Adolescence and young childhood is this time of like, who am I and where do I fit in and what are my friends doing? And they kind of become the comparison point for if you're doing okay. And if you're a cool kid or a nice kid, or who am I, gets compared to a lot of things that are not real, right? Everything online is people's highlight reel most of the time. Yes, you have fail videos and some people who go out of their way to be really authentic about this is what parenting looks like for me today. But in general, people are posting the things that they put in their scrapbook and their happy memories. And so by comparison, things look really rosy everywhere else, which just makes it that much harder to be your own authentic human. And then you add on adolescent development on top of that, and it's very tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything you'd add to that, Caleb?
Yeah, I think that's probably the number one question I get asked when I'm traveling and talking to people. Why are anxiety rates so high right now? What is going on? And I really kind of like to look at a threefold answer to that when I'm talking about it. The first really is the genetic component. Now, there isn't a gene that is specific for anxiety. Either you have it or you don't. But there are a number of genes that we have that with any sort of maladaptations of these genes, it's going to trigger more anxiety. For example, the way we metabolize cortisol within our systems is going to determine whether or not we're in that anxious fight or flight stage more or less, which is going to help contribute to an anxiety disorder. And so as we've got a lot of people that are anxious and they're marrying anxious people and then having anxious children, we're going to see that effect compound over time. And frankly, I don't know that there's been a lot of good instruction in the past on how to manage some of those anxious predispositions, which kind of leads me to my second point of the way we parent. Again, this is just anecdotal, but as we look at some of the older generations of parenting, a lot of times it was just, hey, buck up, kid, deal with it and move on. We don't have time to really deal with these feelings. And the current generation is kind of taking a pendulum swing approach towards parenting that says, I wasn't allowed to feel what I wanted to feel as I was growing up, and I want permission to feel these things. And they're swinging the other direction, saying, hey, we're going to feel everything, which I think is healthy to a point, but it can go kind of on the extreme of how we decide to parent our children, and it turns us into somewhat overprotective parents at times. And so it's important to kind of find that happy medium. And then Bekah, of course, touched on social media and the access to information, particularly information worldwide. I know a lot of people learned about how COVID, for example, affected the world at large. And COVID really taught us that everyone is unsafe and everyone's going to get you sick. And if you interact with people, you might die, and created a lot of fear and concern. And all of that spread on social media. And so we're not always clear what messages are being shared, what is the accuracy and truth of those messages. And even little things. Recently, I learned that one of the most concerning functions of our smartphones these days is the Find My Friends app. And that was a shock to me. How is Find My Friends contributing to anxiety? Well, you take little Johnny, who's tracking 20, 30 of his friends, and he finds out that 7 of them are together at Joey's house and he wasn't invited. And he looks at his phone and says, they're all hanging out without me. They don't like me. I must be stupid. And that leads to other self-judgmental things, a lot of the comparison that Bekah was talking about. And so learning how to use those devices and that technology as a tool rather than something that devastates our mental health is what we've committed our experience to here at Cascade Programs, and wanting to help families learn how they can better use that technology in a safe way.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for that overview and kind of laying the foundation of why we're dealing with what we're dealing with. So I have a question. Are you guys familiar with what the previous Surgeon General said? I don't know if I think it was a couple of years ago, about social media and how he didn't recommend it for youth under the age of 16. What's your take on social media use in teenagers and how, when and how to use it, what's healthy, what's not healthy, those kinds of things?
Wow, yeah. That's a complex one, right? Because you have somebody who's 13 and every single friend is on Instagram or Pinterest or this, that, or the other app. And that's also in the positive side of technology, right? There can be a lot of positive social connections and self-expression and ways to get help and support and to learn things. And so it's always this balance of how can we bolster the good that's part of technology while being aware of the dangers of it. And I think that really needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis, a family to family basis. I think there probably are some kids who are younger than that it could be appropriate for if done well and if monitored well. And I think that really comes down to me, the heart of it. I think parents are getting better at this, but for a long time, we'd have parents who treated phones like somebody's diary, like, or their iPads or whatever, like you can never read it. And that's an invasion of privacy. And, well, somebody's Dear Diary doesn't talk to the entire world and have access to all types of people and information that might not be age appropriate or helpful. And so I think there's been hopefully a lot of progress, and you've probably seen a lot of progress in that, of parents feeling like it was like off limits or they shouldn't touch it. I would say that's number one, right? Like this assessment of what's the family culture, what's the family expectations around what information we should or shouldn't have access to, how do we talk about it, how do we monitor it, and that's like the first place to start. Now, brain development in adolescence, and everybody knows this, our prefrontal cortex isn't developed until our early 20s, and a few years later for boys. And so picking an age of 16, there might be some more science behind it that I'm not aware of, but I really think it could be taken on an individual basis. And for some kids, might not be appropriate till they're older.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you.
So when you asked that question, it made me think about a conversation I recently had with a longtime friend I went to high school with. And we were talking about technology, but he said, Caleb, when I was growing up, my mom was kind of a health freak and she never allowed sugar to be in the house, which made me laugh because when we'd go to another friend's house and they'd have, bowls of candy lying around, I just remember him consuming them by the handfuls, right? It was this, I'm unable to get this need met in a healthy way. And then when it's available, I don't know how to control myself, right? I think when we're thinking about technology, some of those principles can apply, and it's important for us to really delineate biological age versus developmental age. oftentimes we're working with kids that biologically are 16, but developmentally they might feel more like a 12 or 13-year-old for whatever reason. And on the other side of that as well, there are some 12-year-olds that are really 12 going on 18, just as far as their development goes. And so I think looking at it as a case-by-case basis does make some sense. And personally, and here at our programs, we're very much advocates of saying, let's give you as much access as you can manage in a healthy way. And when you demonstrate that you can't be healthy with that, we can retract access, but to restrict it or to have some general line that says no until 16, I think is going to create some complications in the minds of people. Because like Bekah said, there may be some that can use it in a very healthy way and they can learn early how to do that. And that's great. I do think that any sort of, black and white line of restriction is going to create the lack of opportunity for a healthy conversation around social media. And I think that's what's important is as parents for us to be safe enough to have healthy conversations around that. And we can influence, if our kid says, hey, I'm really interested in having social media, and you say, well, what would you like to accomplish? How would you like to accomplish that? Maybe Snapchat's not the right avenue to gain that particular access, but Instagram might be healthy. And let's talk about how we can do that and create enough supervision to make sure that that happens in an appropriate way.
Yeah. I really like that. And that's, you're reminding me of one of our guiding principles is that because of technology, today's youth have the power to do more good or more harm than any previous generation. And it really does take a lot of hand holding and guiding and really intentional parenting to understand what they're ready for, what they're not ready for, so that we guide them down the path of doing more good than more harm. So, okay, so let's talk some more about the tools that you guys offer for parents. Let's say, we have listeners who have children who are struggling with anxiety. What do we do? Where do we start? How do we help our kids?
Let me start kind of more globally, right? And I think you highlighted this at the beginning is one of the hardest things about parenting is it is so hard to know when to push, when to pull, when to let it be, when to intervene, when to let them, try to problem solve on their own. And that's the tricky dance of parenting, and especially parenting kids who you want to become more and more independent, more and more autonomous, right? And have successful and safe experiences, but also participate in the struggle of potential failure and the learning that comes along with that.
For sure.
There's a concept that we use. There's a program called SPACE, and it's Supportive Parenting for Anxious Childhood Emotions. And this is a program developed by Dr. Leibowitz from the Yale Child Study Center. And it's specifically tools for parents about what to do when I have my kid coming with a lot of anxious things. Now, the funny thing is that your child's anxiety, it doesn't just exist by itself, right? It's looped into this other circle with our anxiety. And our job as parents is to respond to our kids' distress signals. And that gets really tricky if our kids' distress signals are maybe disproportionate to what the actual threat or the actual problem is. And so being able to sort that out is really hard for a parent too. And what our distress signals might be disproportionate to what the actual problem is. So just getting this awareness of, is this actually a problem or is it just uncomfortable? Is this anxiety or is this turned into a disorder where it's keeping me or my child from having a fulfilling life and accomplishing our goals? I'd highly recommend family therapy and therapists to kind of help reflect on what's normal and what's not, right? Because every family and every child's going to be so unique.
Mm-hmm.
I'll dip over to the concept that I really like the most from the SPACE curriculum. And this is the idea of what actually is support, right? Supportive parenting for anxious childhood emotions. What is support? And we know, like Caleb was talking about, with these different cohorts of parents, generally speaking, I think our generation has done a good job being very validating, right? I hear you. I know that's hard for you. I actually think we've done pretty good not even agreeing, that we know there's a difference between validating and agreeing. So I might disagree with what my child is is like the reality of what they say they're experiencing, but I can always validate their emotion. I see that this is hard for you. I see you're having a hard time with. Knowing you, I know, blah, 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 right? And we can support them that way. But that's not enough, right? We can't just validate. So then we get two different pathways where a parent might want to intervene. And sometimes that's necessary. Or, especially the older our kids get, we need to help them intervene on their own behalf and instill in them confidence that we believe they can problem solve some of these things. And so a great concept from space is called the mac and the cheese. That we want to make mac and cheese, and you can just have the cheese or you can just have the noodles. But when you put them together, right, chef's kiss, if it's good mac and cheese. And that equals I'm validating them and I'm instilling confidence, and that equals support. I know this is so hard for you, and I wonder how you're going to problem solve this, or I'm excited to see how you're going to work through it. And you can even offer, what would you like from me, or how can I support you in that? But generally, it's putting the confidence back on your child that we see this as a challenge, and we believe you're going to find a good way through it, which increases their autonomy, increases their self-efficacy, and the belief that they can handle hard things.
I love that. That sounds, I don't know, it feels very doable. Like if, especially with the mac and cheese analogy. Okay, I can come up with the cheese and I can come up with the mac, and let's just put them together now. That's great.
So I'm going to go a little bit and dig into some of my rec therapy roots to answer this question, which I think aligns perfectly with what Bekah's saying. Albert Bandura is the father of self-efficacy theory. Self-efficacy is just a complicated way of saying self-confidence, right? But self-efficacy theory states that the greatest predictor of future success is your belief in your ability to succeed. So I believe self-efficacy starts when children are born and as they're going through early childhood development experiences, and parents that are constantly helping their child push the boundaries of comfort. Isn't that what walking is all about? I know that I'm going to fall down, but it's worth it trying again. It's worth it getting up, and there's not a parent out there that I know that when a child tries to walk and falls down, they look at the child and they say, "Oh, you idiot. I can't believe you fell down," right? They just celebrate the success of growth. And whether it's 2 steps, 5 steps, around the living room, they get excited about what that looks like. If you continue to take that approach with your child throughout their entire development, that is how you can help your child have a deep-rooted belief in their own ability to succeed. If you clear the path for them and make it perfectly smooth and let them know, oh, without me helping you, you're probably not going to be able to learn this. You're like that parent that holds on to your baby's finger and says, you'll never know how to do this on your own. You have to learn you have to hold on to my finger. At some point, you've got to let go, right? And so we know that when you push a child too hard to do something that they're not ready for, that's just called trauma, or that's going to force them into a belief that, oh, I'm going to fail. But when you can kind of pair the challenge with their ability that's just on the cusp of their comfort zone, you are going to help them grow in whatever it is that they're addressing. I love to talk about this because a great example of that is our recreation therapy program here at Cascade Programs. What we do is we take a skill that most of our students, because they've been very anxious in their past, haven't ever experienced. Experiences like skiing and snowboarding or rock climbing or mountain biking. And a lot of our families think, oh, there's no way you're ever going to get my child to rock climb. Well, we start at the very beginning of that process and we say, hey, let us teach you how to tie the right knots. Let us teach you the vocabulary. Let us teach you how to put on a harness. And we walk them through step by step until they get confidence in this foundational method, and then they build on that over time. Over the course of about 8 weeks, they learn how to take the risk. They learn that it's safe. They learn how to climb. They learn how to belay other climbers and trust the safety of others in their own hands. And then at the end of this 8 to 10 week process of learning rock climbing, they go down to Southern Utah. In fact, we've got a group of students in Southern Utah right now, and they're rock climbing and they're rappelling, and their parents' minds are just blown, saying, I never thought my child could do that. Well, if we'd have taken them to this giant 75-foot cliff on day one and said, today we're rappelling, buckle up, we're going to do this, there's no way that they'd build the self-efficacy in order to do that successfully. And so as parents, I think we need to be constantly thinking, what is the next step on my child's journey that is going to build their confidence? And maybe they're back farther than we want them to be. And so we have to meet them where they're at and just slowly integrate challenges that they can succeed at. And the beautiful thing about self-efficacy that I love, and this is, I think, what really drew me into this field, is that self-efficacy is transferable. The same principles that helped you learn how to rock climb are going to help you learn calculus. They're going to help you learn how to have a relationship with friends. They're going to help you learn how to order food at a restaurant when that's really scary for you. You can't just throw them into it and expect them to be successful, but as you take steps and you're constantly pushing that comfort zone, then there's really nothing that you're going to be able to accomplish. And that is a really exciting thing that I think our adolescents learn as they're trusted to take those risks themselves. And so, like Bekah was mentioning in the space training, there's a huge difference between a parent talking to their child and saying, wow, this is really scary for you, let me help you accomplish it, versus saying, wow, this is probably really scary for you, but I believe in your ability to succeed and I'm always here if you need me. That really encourages them to take those risks and move forward and grow themselves.
Absolutely. What are some signs to look for maybe of when it's okay to push a little bit harder and when you need to back off a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? Because every scenario is so different. So it's what are sort of like the decision-making models or questions parents should be asking themselves. And I'd start by looking at if my child fails at this, what are the potential detrimental effects? Are they long-lasting damage, right? So I want to match if there's a high-risk situation where if this doesn't go well, somebody's going to have a really terrible time. It's going to be hard to put back together. It's not really recoverable. I probably want to be more involved, right? There's a lot of little things that our children can fail at, and the fallout from that failure is okay. It's learning. So I want to look at sort of the risk of if this goes poorly, how bad is it really? And probably notch it down a few pegs, because I think even as parents, we have a tendency to catastrophize. We're like, oh, it's going to be so bad because then she's going to have hurt feelings and then this, and like we might be catastrophizing too. But really play out the reality of, is this a challenge that is safe to be a little risky on and allow failure for? The other thing I would think about, what Caleb was mentioning, was what's my child's skill level? And I don't want to match the challenge with their skill level. I want the challenge to be slightly harder than their skill level, because that's where skills and growth happen, right? Just even for us as adults, the first time we try a new venture or a new job, or, people who go back to school, like the intention is that it's something we're already not masters at, because that's where the growth happens. So like Caleb said, we want to look for those opportunities for our kids, and we want to match the skill level to be just a little bit harder than what they're currently at. That takes a lot of conscientious parenting, like you were mentioning before. Sometimes we just get on autopilot, and we might not stop to think, oh, my daughter's actually old enough, she can call the haircut place and schedule a haircut. I might need to give her these parameters, and then I can say, here you go. And things and opportunities we don't typically think of, right? Because sometimes it is easier just to do it ourselves as a parent. It's faster, it's more organized, it's gonna go better. So we have to slow down and be conscientious about finding those opportunities, match them to the skill level, and then think about the risk of failure and the benefit of success too. If it does go well, how good is that?
Yeah. What's worth it? You reminded me of, I don't know, a few months ago, I took my son to a doctor's appointment and I realized, wait, he can fill this paperwork out himself. I don't need to fill this out for him. It's like, when, he's kind of nervous, like thought he was going to mess up. And I was like, no, you got this. I'm right here helping you do this. So yeah, I love that.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I would add on to that. I would pay close attention to your child's kind of avoidance. I think anxiety and OCD, they're avoidant disorders. And so, especially when they're avoiding something that they haven't avoided in the past, understanding that, wow, there's probably something to this, and I can kind of dig through that and address the real issue. If you've got a son that suddenly has always loved football and now is refusing to go to football practice, understanding the why and then creating the appropriate challenge to address that. It could be a social reason, or it could be a coach, or it could be other players. It could be a whole host of things. And so understanding that and then assertively addressing the real issues. If you've got a child that is refusing to go to school all of a sudden, I think that's something that we deal with a lot, is school avoidance. And the scary thing about school avoidance is oftentimes parents are just trying to support their child until suddenly they realize, holy cow, how did we get here? Suddenly my child hasn't been to school in 3 weeks. They now believe that they don't have to go. They're locked in their room. And I've got this huge mountain to climb to get them back into school. And so when you're looking at their avoidant patterns, everything from what they eat to where they'll go to what they're willing to do, really understanding what they're avoiding, what is a new avoidance pattern, and getting to the why of why they're avoiding those things is going to help you as a parent understand, okay, this is where I can push a little bit, and this is where I need support.
Yes. Okay. That's so good. Because I've been thinking, when I have issues with my children where it seems like they're reverting, like, you were doing so well at this, and now what's going on? Why are we suddenly having issues with it? Okay. So I'd love to hear like a success story. Can you tell us about a time, whether it's in your own program or with a parent that you worked with or something, where things turned out really well when they were very dark or worrisome in the beginning?
A lot. We're probably thinking of some of the same kids, I'm sure, because they're fun stories to tell.
I had a memory pop into my mind, a story that I haven't told in a long time, but it's always been one of my favorites. We were here at Cascade Academy teaching our students how to ski. And you can imagine kids with OCD and a lot of different fears. It takes a long time, especially with like a contamination disorder. Just helping a student put on a rental boot that's been worn by hundreds of other people, can be a terrifying process that takes a minute to work through. And we were working with a particular student, and again, it was weeks spent on understanding the gear, the language, cross-country skiing, and finally we went downhill skiing for the first time. And usually we'll start on the bunny hill and then go to the greens. And, me personally, I can get to the bottom of the green hill in about 2 minutes. With this one particular client, we were on hour 4 trying to get down this hill. And there's no other option. You have to get to the bottom. You can't just suddenly appear at the bottom of the hill, and they would fall, and each fall they'd have to get back up. And it was this long process. And I thought, this is a nightmare. This child is learning that they're incapable, that they can't do it. I was really worried about the experience that this child was going to go home with. And after 4 hours, we finally made it to the bottom of the mountain. We got in the car with a group of their peers, and the student said, hey, I want everyone to listen up right now. And I thought, oh, great. She's going to complain or talk about how awful this was. And she says, I want everyone to just know one thing. Today on the mountain, I fell 36 times. But guess what? I got up 36 times, and everybody cheered. And it was this moment where I was like, I really thought that was going another direction. And over the course of the next few weeks, she learned how to ski. And suddenly that belief in herself, it was just contagious into all the other aspects of what she was doing in life. And I realized, wow, that was really outside of her comfort zone. But that particular experience taught her that sometimes I just have to get up. That's all I can do, is I just have to get up and move on. So that type of experience always inspires me. It was wonderful.
Wow. I guess dealing with these things as a parent and trying to help our kids, we have to realize it's going to take a lot of patience, it sounds like. Like, you may be on one green hill for 4+ hours. So I don't know. Do you have any encouragement for parents? I mean, I guess your story is encouragement that look how that turned out, but any other thoughts that you can offer parents of you can do this, and these kinds of things that we've been talking about actually do work.
I think a big problem is that so often we as parents are just looking for efficiency. The reality is you're probably better at most things than your child. You have a lot of experience. It's the same old story of the kindergartner who wants to tie their own shoes before school, but you're running late and you're going to be at the end of the line at drop off and it's going to throw off your whole day. But if you let them tie their shoes, even though it takes 7 minutes instead of 7 seconds, it's going to instill with them some of that growth and that opportunity. And you're absolutely right. It requires a tremendous amount of patience. And if you don't have the vision to see beyond this moment, you're not going to do it. You're not going to take the time to allow it to be done right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would add on to just the theme that we were talking about earlier about comparison, right? Not only are adolescents comparing themselves to each other, but we as parents do that. Well, my daughter's friends come over and I'm like, well, they're really good at that or this, but they all have unique strengths. And so it's not just the kids who are doing the comparison, it's parents. And sometimes we're trying to judge, like, are we on the right trajectory? Are we doing okay? And so just remembering the individual journey, the individual family's experience is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And that whole idea of like the tying your shoelaces before school in kindergarten, it reminds me of what Bekah was saying earlier, that what's weighing out the risk and the benefits. Like, is it worth being late so that my kid can develop some self-efficacy in regards to tying his own shoelaces? So thank you for that.
I'm also supportive of Velcro shoes. Right. I say that to highlight is sometimes because of the way life is or what's going on in our families, there are some times where you might not have the bandwidth or the pay, and you really can't be late. And that's okay too, right? But it's intentional and it's conscientious, and you'll get to that when the time is right, because the whole family has to be prepared for whatever space we need to make for our kids to develop. And so make the space, but be intentional about the real costs and be patient with ourselves as the adults who have a lot of plates that are being juggled, that sometimes it might not be the right time, and sometimes Velcro shoes are okay.
Yes. Thank you. Giving parents some grace. Thank you. Okay. So how do we know when what we are doing or what we can offer our kids is not enough? Like when is it time to seek outside help?
One, I think what Caleb was saying earlier, noticing changes in types of avoidance or not participating or not showing up to aspects of life that your kid really likes or generally would be participating in. So if school refusal is cropping up there, if avoidance of friends or hobbies and things that make them passionate, communication with parents, going downhill, that's a time that warrants discussion about what's happening here. And maybe we need some outside help.
Thank you. Okay, so I would love to hear, as we wrap up, any final thoughts from both of you about final thoughts for parents, both on counseling them and things that they can do, but also final thoughts of hope for them, like to just encourage and let them, I don't know, just feel like they can do it.
Yeah, I'll go first. As Bekah was talking, I'm just been over here kind of introspective at my own parenting a little bit. And I was reminded of a conversation I had once with a father of 5 children. And one of them was just really struggling. And his comment to me was, I don't know what's wrong with this child. I raised them the exact same way I raised my other 4. Why aren't they responding correctly? And the answer just hit me. And I said, because you're raising him the exact same way you raised the other 4. And he kind of looked at me and kind of got offended. And he said, excuse me? And then we had this great conversation about the uniqueness of each child and how developmentally we might, as parents, because of that comparison that Bekah was talking about, get really afraid. And that fear always makes us interact in the wrong way. It makes us push too hard, or it makes us too protective. Fear is the enemy when you're parenting. I looked back, and the introspection that I did was myself. My first child, she started walking at 8 months. And I was so proud because my friends were having children. And I had one buddy who's 14-month-old wasn't walking yet. And I said, yeah, we're so advanced. Well, now she's 20 years old. And guess what? They both walk really well. Right. And so in those moments of comparison where you're just thinking like, this is the end all be all of the judgment of me as a parent. At what age are they talking? Are they in the school play? Did they make the varsity team? All of those things are really temporary. And when you take that comparison away, you're just left with these beautiful, wonderful children that each have their own skills, their own talents. And as you see them, and you quit the comparison and you just let them thrive and you're there as a source of belief for them, it's really, really powerful. A cool study was done at Florida State University that talked about individuals that had turned their life around. And they had all these hypotheses that they were looking at. Why did this person change their life around? Was it because of medication? Was it because of therapy? Was it because of this? And at the conclusion of their study, they had done interviews with over 300 individuals. And every individual that had a sustained change of trajectory in their life cited someone that believed in them. It was either an elementary school teacher, a scoutmaster, a religious leader that found them and saw them and said, I believe in you and I'm going to be here for you. And I think you can do it. It wasn't let me do it for you, but it was, I believe you can do it. I think that is just a powerful lesson for all of us that our kids are going to develop at their own pace and at their own time. And as we see the individual and the beauty that's within them, we're going to know intuitively how we can be the best support system as long as we believe in them and what they can become.
Wow. Thank you.
A tough act to follow. I loved all of that. Yeah, I think
I believe in you, Bekah.
Oh, thank you. I can do it. I think one of the important things in line with that grace to ourselves, right, and to how our kids develop, and to not be the most perfect parent in the room, because then you're not human, right? We're like, give up the illusion of being a perfect parent. The fact that people are learning and developing and being intentional and thoughtful about parenting, great, you've done it, right? That's the best any of us really can do or expect of ourselves. And I'll give a little plug for one of our friends, Dr. Brad Reedy. We often gift this book to our parents that we work with called The Journey of the Heroic Parent. And so I like that concept better, be a heroic parent versus then a perfect parent, because that doesn't exist. And when we do that, like Caleb was saying, we can really make the space to allow our kids to grow into who they are. I will say a lot of kids, especially kids with anxiety disorders, are more stressed out about how they're making their parent feel. Does my mom feel good about how I'm doing? Does my dad feel good about how I did here or there? And so accidentally, sometimes they become caretakers of what they think our perception of them is in their attempt to take care of us. And the more we can differentiate from that and allow them just to be them and let them know that our happiness is not dependent on their performance, I think the happier we all can be, and it makes that space and it brings in that grace and gratitude for individual development.
I love that. Thank you so much. I just feel like, when we take away all those things, all the things that we put pressure on ourselves about or on our kids about, and we just focus on loving them for who they are and who they can be, oh man, no need for anxiety there, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Well, thank you both so much. I have been so inspired by what you've shared today, and I can't wait to see my kids when they get home from school and do a better job based on what I've learned here today. So I appreciate you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. It's been a pleasure.
If you felt inspired by today's episode, I hope you will go to projectstand.org/stand to support our efforts to continue providing episodes like this. Thank you for listening and have an awesome day.